only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. Last week we were taken on a journey to higher dimensions that are impossible to really see or feel or understand, except perhaps through the descriptions of Neil Peart and the music and the lyrics that he sends. I'm very pleased that Esther has again excelled herself by taking the lyrics from the creation poem that were channeled through to me by Neil, and she's put it to some most wonderful music again. And I'll be playing that in a few minutes. But first of all, I just need to quickly tell you what's been happening over the last few days. As usual, so many things have come through to me, usually again starting probably Sunday night. And already the lyrics for a new song came through, which obviously then gave me a very good clue as to what we're going to be discussing this week. And it's all the follow-on from that point where you've learned to create. And it's the point just before where you make those decisions about what to do next. Whether you'd choose to perhaps to have another life, or if you would choose to perhaps do something else. And this, of course, I believe, could take place over many of our thousands of our years, because there is no such thing as time. So, yes, this week is most definitely going to be all about choices, about decisions, all about the harmony involved in coming to the understanding that everything you've experienced and everything you learned comes together, and in a way you feel all-knowing and you have the knowledge that's required for you to move on to the other directions. It sounds quite complicated, but equally it's quite simple. So before we move on into the land of choices and decisions, let me play you quickly the lovely poem that Neil wrote and the music that Esther's put with my channeled piano from last week. Everything new has been before. Old is dynamic and nothing more. Think it so, and then it will be. Make a reflection of what's truly me. Turn it on, then light it, and will it to life. Your artist's impression, a beacon of light. Discard it, destroy it, while it renews your soul. Reshape it, refashion, to make it all whole. Get better, feel stronger, mix energy with will. Mistakes, correction, it's all perfect still. Like a drummer with no fingers, or a painter that's blind, it is more than just colors, the frequencies they find. Create something new from the sounds that you feel. Think something solid, then something is real. Endless variation from just a few notes. Your conscious creation, your gift and your hopes. Here, no sad songs are sung alone at night. Just a wonderful feeling in the light. Well, that was amazing, I think. Again, it always blows my mind how Esther manages to get an interpretation from the music that I'm channeling from Neil and others. Quite a beautiful piece of music, and now the fourth finished complete song. And later on, I will try again with my piano and see what I can get. And also I have already the lyrics for the new song, which is going to be all about changes. Changes, choices, decisions. And to introduce this subject a little bit further, I'm just going to go away for a while and get myself ready and see if I can't ask Neil Peart to come back, which I'm sure he will. And let's see what this next phase takes us to. Well, that was quite a lot quicker than I thought it would be. It was only a few minutes, and already I can definitely feel that energy that is Neil Peart, and he's right here. And yes, so Neil, if you could perhaps explain to us where we're going next. Now, interestingly, he is actually showing me something. It's a memory of mine. And he says, he wants me to discuss that, to quickly give an example of the sort of choices that we have after we've had the chance to learn various aspects of our previous lives, understand the guilt, understand what creativity is all about, understand what regret is about. Once we've had that sense of redemption, we are ready almost to start deciding the choices that we will face either in our next incarnation, or we will make choices about what to do if we don't decide to live again. He said it's been mentioned before that quite often human souls that are isolated in their human soul groups can spend the equivalent of many thousands of years in our time having various reincarnational existences. But he says one of those dreams that I had a long time ago, I should recount. And he's actually showing it to me, and I'm feeling all the memories coming back. And I may have even mentioned some of this before, but it was a chance that I got with Titan, although I didn't know he was Titan then, to look at what he described to me as being a book of life, which was an example of my particular life at that time. And it was like a book, and it was very much like a Harry Potter book, because it was made up of pictures, well, not words. That I don't remember the words, but it was just pictures. But these pictures were moving, and they were like movies, and you could almost get sucked into the reality of what they were depicting as you were flicking the pages. And what really struck me, and I think this is what Neil wants me to mention, was that in my case, how many lives were very, very similar. And they were actually more like compilations of highlights of my life. And I remember a lot of it concentrated around death as well, how I died in those lives. And I remember being very disturbed at the time because there were so many auto crashes. So Neil's, I can feel he's enjoying this because I think as Neil Peart, he certainly did enjoy his cars and his motorcycles. And he's tutting to himself a bit there. He's liking that. And he says the reason he wants me to mention it is because it's a sequence that he finds very interesting in my life. But he says each one of those lives you saw, each of those, if you like, auto crashes that you had, you might want to think that that's a very repetitive, rather pointless way to keep repeating yourself. But he said that every single time you have a life, you do plan the end pretty much, although there's some free will involved. And you are there to learn the lessons, but you don't always learn them. You make the choices to learn, or you make the choices not to learn. And if you don't learn, then you are destined to keep repeating some of the same mistakes, or taking the roads that would eventually lead to that type of accident without sort of learning to take a different road. And he says that's really what he's trying to say. Oh, he's also wanting me to point out that in a lot of the lives, I was actually a homeless person. And he's indicating to me too that it was very interesting in this particular life when I was a young man. I was fascinated by helping homeless people, and I ended up joining a community group where I lived, and would do my best to try to help people who were sleeping rough. And he's saying yes, because that immediately resonated with you. And he says that people can get in touch with these choices that they make when they are deciding what to do in their next life, very much from the things that interest them tremendously in this life. He says if you are a musician in this life, this was a choice that was made because you were particularly interested in what it felt like to learn the skills, or you felt you need to have something in this life where skill learning would be very essential to you. You also needed to make those choices, which were very important in the foundations of your development, because you could decide to be a musician, or you could decide to become an auto engineer. But the choices that you made would lead you eventually to becoming a musician. He says actually it's quite a how would you say it? He said it's quite a cliche. It's quite a common story amongst the musical fraternity. He knows that, or the acting fraternity, that choices are hugely important, because it's so easy in the cutthroat environment of becoming a musician or an actor that you don't get very far very quickly, he says. And you can also waste an awful lot of time trying to get on and then never succeeding. But these choices are what shape you, and you have to have such determination in order to stick at something. And in his particular case, that was very, very important. That was a lesson he's had to learn over a number of lifetimes, to stick with it and to be determined, even though insurmountable odds hit him, or horrible incidents and accidents and all sorts of things, he was saying, could have persuaded him to go off that path. And he's wanting just to reiterate that in those particular dreams that I've had, for whatever reason, I loved and was obsessed by motor cars, which I can tell you, quite frankly, I'm not. But there we go. I must have learned that lesson. But I was, and he said I was obsessed with high speed and traveling at very high speed, and I quite often ended up killing myself in these autos. he mentions to me, now he's showing me this dream of mine again, that so many of the cars were futuristic. They weren't cars that have been designed. He's saying now, many of your lives that you've had were choices that you made not to be a physical person. You've had, if you like, you've had a number of mental lives. You've been able to create what is reality to you, but you've not actually incarnated as a human. But your life is as real as if you had been human. And therefore, the type of cars that you had were usually the probable creations of people who had designed cars but hadn't actually finished that design in an Earth environment. Okay, that's quite interesting. And he says it's very important that you realize that in a state of making a choice, something is discarded, or many things are discarded. But those discarded choices are still choices, and because you chose to discard them. And they have as much relevance on a level of existence as the conscious choice that you think you have made. He says you have to be very careful with your choices, because choices have huge consequences. Because if you wish something to be, if you choose to do something, although you may not actually choose something that is terribly positive, it may end up having very positive consequences for you and for other people. Equally, if you choose something that is extremely positive to you as a choice, it may end up having incredibly negative consequences or positive outcomes for you or for society. So choices are hugely important, and they're limitless. He says that it's eternal in terms of trying to explain how choices are affecting your reincarnational self and your soul and your future, as well as all the lives on Earth and other dimensions. These choices, he says that he's now taking us off to what we can call the Hall of Choices, if you like. But he says you won't be able to obviously see it. What I can see, and I was expecting this, is a real blue cloud. It's just blue. Why is it blue, Neil? He says that because the blue color is very much how I could probably interpret a choice. To make a choice requires a huge amount of energy, and that energy can be seen as blue in our environment. He says that we are now, he says, in this, what you might want to call a hall, although as with all the halls, there isn't a hall. This is really a mental space that energy beings can feel and can cooperate within, and they can encounter all the possible decisions that will ever be presented to a potential life. And he says, we go through these, again, over the course of your thousands of years, before any life, because we go through all the choices and the decisions that life may have to make or not make, as the case may be. He says this is what makes life blueprints. This is what makes the mastery of time. And he says that in some respects, he's very amused how he felt, and he heard people thinking about it when he was alive last, that life on Earth is considered to be almost like a 3D hologram or maybe a computer simulation. And he says you don't realize now probably how right you are. That the life you are leading is not a computer and it's not a simulation, but it is a computer simulation. If you like, it's a form of simulation that you have created through your decisions and your thoughts, and it's been done with tremendous precision and detail. And if you like, then it's done by computer, but it's not. It's far more complicated than that. And it's a simulation, yes, but it's very different from a simulation, because to you it feels like life. And that is life, he says. That is what life is. It's a combination of choices and decisions that you put into order and eventually choose a life to inhabit, to put those choices and those decisions into play. And the purpose of that is to learn from those choices and the decisions. He also wants to mention that if you think about it as a child, the earliest memories of a child will be presented with a range of choices that have to be made in order to make an outcome. And he says children, spend most of their young lives choosing and learning to do things based on societal correct choices. But that is, if you like, part of the human condition, that it's just an eternal series of choices. But these choices that are made as part of a human life in terms of free will are massively influenced by the blueprint that you have made before you've become alive. He's saying that he also wants to mention that there is no such thing as a wrong or a right choice. Choices where we are, as he said, are very much grounded by what is considered to be morally right or societally right in our system. But where he is, there is no right choice, there is no wrong choice. All choices take place, and he can see and he can feel in a way that he cannot even begin to describe the outcomes of all the possibilities and all the choices that are made in order to create a life. And the right way, if you want, for a choice is the way that it is right for you and your development. And that could be, in a earth life, he says, considered to be wrong, and vice versa. And he said, ironically, although we have free will as a human, free will is very much the product of previous choices. If you hadn't had choices and you hadn't made decisions, you wouldn't be able to exercise free will because you wouldn't know strongly enough which direction to take. So in life, he says, we make good and bad choices, but that's on purpose so that we learn. And that we become, we come to a stage, he says, where it's not necessary to make choices anymore. He said that is the perfect state that exists with the souls that are in this hall, that they learn from their lives. They learn ultimately that choice is no longer necessary, because everything just then exists in complete harmony. And you can then move on. But if you haven't come to that realization, he says, that is where you basically are encouraged with various masters and helpers who are there to try again and to keep going until you have come to that conclusion that every single choice that you've ever been able to make is fully understood, and that you've righted the wrongs as you would see it. But then once you've done that, you will realize that it wasn't wrong. It was just part of your development. Everything ultimately leads to the most experience and the most learning. And he says this is why he wanted to show me this. And this area of choice is the penultimate, he says, area that he wants to show me. Because ultimately, if you cannot fully resolve your decision-making and your choices and understand the effect that it has on you as a soul, then you can have the road, he says, diverges from here. It's like a fork, he says. There will be a fork. It'll go, say, to your left, where you will go to decide what choices you need to learn and how you're going to live those out in a life, and then moving on to find that life. And he says, we will discuss that in another episode. Or he says you can move to the other side of it, where you have realized there are no more decisions to be taken. You are fully aware of all the decisions that you ever have made or ever could have made, and are completely comfortable. And he can only say, he's saying it again, the word harmony. He says, I know it's a sort of a musical term too, but it is a perfect state where there is no positive or negative input on you. You're not being pushed in any particular direction because you're completely comfortable. He's laughing, and he said it's not just like having a joint where you're just spaced out. This is a completely fundamental understanding of the nature of existence, and being in complete harmony, and no need for any further development. Okay, so Neil, suppose you take the right-hand path. I mean, it's obvious what happens if you take the left-hand path. You're going to, reincarnate until you get to the point where you can go to the right, I suppose. And he said, yes, exactly. If you take the right-hand path, we will discuss that again in a future podcast. That is when you decide to do something completely different, which is usually either you have time for yourself to return to create things, or basically, he says, almost there's a sense of recreation to it, or you can then decide to help other souls who are not as advanced as you are at that point, but you are. Or there are further choices that you can leave the dimension, the human-influenced dimensions, which we're in at the moment, he says, completely, and enter dimensions of completely other sorts of existence. He says, I can't take you there. He says, this is not something that he would or would want to take me to, although he says he has been there and he has been involved in other dimensions. But he said this would be equally terrifying, but also dangerous, because it's not related to my species or my existence for a long time. And he says, he's got some bad news for you. This by no means is your last life. So you're not ready for that. And there is nothing to be gained, but a lot to be lost if you were to glimpse those other lives in other dimensions. It would kind of, he's actually using a bad word there, which I won't use, but it begins with F up. Okay. He's saying for now, we will take the alternate route for now, and we will move on, he says, next time to where we actually choose the next lives and how that process works. Okay. And he says that's really all that he wants to say now. And really the only important thing to do is to discuss the poem, the lyrics that he has given me, which will make up the fifth song. And he says that we will try again to do the channeling of the music to go along with that, and hopefully we can send that along to Esther to turn into something that you can actually musically understand. So thank you very much, Neil. Very, very much indeed for coming by again. And I will read out these words that came to me 2 days ago, and I've been sort of every once in a while looking at them because something comes to me and I need to change it. And even as I'm looking at it again, new words come in and new words get taken away. So I believe that's a sort of an editing process that's going on. It's really not from me. It's very much from Neil. And I suppose I'm having to get corrected because there's various, data errors when he does transmit it through to me, and it takes a while for me to get it right. So I think I've got it about as right as I possibly can. So I will go ahead and I will read this new poem, which simply is called Choices. All choices dominate our lives. Things moving forward and back, meeting obstacles as we gain what we lack. Our choices form our experience. It is to pass or remain, overtake and exist. Define the direction and never be missed. Fragments used, paths not chosen, choosing our experience, never frozen. Our plan to recognize the best way through, glimpse the true meaning of why it's so blue. The goal, if we meet an obstacle again, is that no choice is needed, 10 out of 10. The perfect harmony of existence appears and is greeted. Know the state of matter, surprises defeated. Emotion, feeling no longer is needed. Perfect peace is achieved and retained. Everything is learned and finally trained. Decide to end the reincarnation line. Our free will, what's yours, what's mine. The next stage where we do it new this time, as teachers and masters, or choosing to stay, helping all souls find the true right way. After many more trials as masters of time, ours may be up, our choices decided. Choices to explore can finally be guided. Through systems of life impossible to grasp, forms we can't see or imagine or clasp. Beyond that current level of being, new senses are needed. Choose love and feel it succeeded. We are graduates starting another eternity, still novices with a brand new fraternity. So yes, reading that poem, I can certainly see an awful lot of things that Neil mentioned. I think what's particularly interesting to me, listening to that and the feelings that I've had in this particular episode, is how having a choice seems to be in all our lives the most obvious thing. Sometimes you make choices out of need. Maybe things happen to you. I mean, if I could think about some of the lovely people who've written to me and they've lost their partners or friends or family or sons or daughters, you could hardly believe that was a choice. But the choices were made somewhere along the line for whatever reason, for the things to happen the way they did. But what makes you learn, I suppose, is how you deal with these matters and what choices you then make to overcome, I suppose, as you mentioned, the grief or the regret, to make positive changes in your life with creation, to forgive yourself for things that you've done wrong or those that you feel have done wrong to you by accident or by design. I suppose ultimately, yes, we're leading to that point where you can stop having to choose. And at that point, if that's some sort of harmony, that seems to me a wonderful way to go. And I'll be fascinated to see what happens next week as we move on to making a choice about what life we may choose to have again, because we're still in the business of making choices. There we are. So before I go, I will set up the piano and see if something can come through. Now, most definitely there has been a theme that was going through my head at the weekend, and I will see if I can't put that in there as well. Let's see how it goes. Well, there we go. And Esther, please make of that what you can. Very interesting feelings as I was playing those notes. I was obviously consciously trying to think, where are the choices here? But there were choices because I had that choice, which note to play, as well as feeling whether that was the right note to play. But also, having played it, could I play a different note? And I was sort of playing with that a bit there, because it was this choice between what was going to come through me, how I was going to interpret that, what I thought about it once I did it. Could I do it again slightly differently? And in the end, do I really care? Because it'll come through as it's supposed to come through. And I suppose I reached a form of harmony where exactly as it's supposed to be, it was. I can only say it like that. So that was really interesting. Anyway, so let's see what we can make of our fifth song, all about the amazing things that happen in our lives when we get to choose. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll see each other soon.